As this year turns, many of us are standing at the edge of 2026 with hope in one hand and exhaustion in the other. We tell ourselves this will be the year we finally become disciplined, focused, consistent. But if we're honest, most of our past promises didn't fail because we lacked ambition. They failed because we let our moods take the steering wheel. Moods arrive quickly and leave just as fast. They are shaped by sleep, stress, conversations, memories, and circumstances we often don't control. One day we wake up energized and hopeful, convinced we can do anything. The next day, that certainty disappears, replaced by doubt, fatigue, or indifference. This doesn't mean something is wrong with us. It means we are human. The mistake we make is treating these temporary emotional states as if they are reliable instructions for how to live our lives. When moods are in charge, everything becomes negotiable. Commitments feel optional. Goals feel heavy. Discipline feels like punishment instead of care. We tell ourselves we'll act when we feel ready, inspired, or confident, but readiness is a feeling and feelings are inconsistent. If we wait for the right mood, we end up postponing the very actions that could change how we feel. Moods are powerful, but they are not wise. They respond to the moment, not to the future we are trying to build. Values are different. Values are chosen, not felt. They come from reflection, from lived experience, from deciding what matters even when it's uncomfortable. Values don't disappear when we're tired. They don't fluctuate with praise or criticism. They act as anchors when emotions surge and pull in different directions. When we live by values, we don't ask, "What do I feel like doing today?" We ask, "Who do I want to be, even on hard days?" Following values doesn't mean ignoring emotions. It means listening to them without surrendering leadership to them. You can acknowledge exhaustion without letting it erase your commitment. You can feel afraid without letting fear define your decisions. Values allow us to hold emotions with compassion while still choosing actions that align with our long-term integrity. This is where quiet strength is built. Each time you act according to your values instead of your mood, you reinforce a deeper identity. You become someone who can be trusted by yourself. Over time, this consistency creates stability. It reduces inner conflict. It replaces self-judgment with self-respect. You stop seeing discipline as force and start seeing it as care. Life will always offer emotional weather, storms of doubt, fogs of uncertainty, flashes of motivation that vanish by morning. Values are the ground beneath all of it. They don't promise ease, but they offer direction. And direction, followed consistently, is what turns scattered effort into a meaningful life. A plan is often misunderstood as pressure, rigidity, or control. Many people resist planning because they associate it with perfectionism or fear of failure. But at its core, a plan is not a demand you place on yourself. It is a promise. It is a decision made in a moment of clarity that says your time, energy, and future matter enough to be handled with care. Creating a plan is one of the quietest and most powerful forms of self-respect. When you make a plan, you are acknowledging your limits instead of denying them. You are accepting that motivation will not always show up, that life will interrupt you, and that emotions will fluctuate. A plan exists not because you expect everything to go smoothly, but because you know it won't. It is a structure designed to hold you steady when circumstances and moods try to pull you off course. In this way, planning is not about control, it is about compassion. Self-respect shows up in how you prepare for your own humanity. A plan anticipates tired days and busy weeks. It allows for rest without turning rest into abandonment. It gives you something to return to when you've drifted, instead of forcing you to start over in shame. People who respect themselves don't punish mistakes. They create systems that make recovery easier. A plan is one of those systems. Following a plan is also how you stop negotiating with yourself every day. Without a plan, every decision requires emotional energy. You debate whether to show up, whether it's worth it, whether today should be an exception. Over time, this constant negotiation erodes confidence. A plan removes that friction. It answers the question before it's asked. It says, "This is who I am and how I move forward, even when it's uncomfortable." Respect grows through consistency. Each time you honor your plan, you reinforce the belief that you are someone who keeps promises to yourself. That belief changes how you speak to yourself, how you tolerate distractions, and how seriously you take your own goals. You stop needing external validation because your actions confirm your worth. A plan does not guarantee success, but it does guarantee alignment. It keeps your daily behavior connected to your deeper intentions. And living in alignment, especially when no one is watching, is one of the truest expressions of self-respect there is. Trust with yourself is not built through big promises or dramatic breakthroughs. It is built quietly, in ordinary moments, through consistency. Every time you say you will do something and then follow through, especially when it would be easier not to, you place a small deposit into your own sense of reliability. Over time, those deposits compound into self-trust, one of the most stabilizing forces in a person's life. Many people struggle not because they lack ability, but because they don't believe themselves anymore. They've made plans they didn't keep, commitments they abandoned when things got uncomfortable, and promises they postponed until motivation returned. This doesn't make them weak, it makes them human. But repeated self-betrayal, even in small ways, creates doubt. You begin to question your own words. You hesitate to set goals because part of you assumes you won't follow through anyway. Consistency interrupts that cycle. It doesn't require intensity or perfection. It requires showing up in a way that is realistic and repeatable. Doing a little often rebuilds confidence far more effectively than doing a lot once. Each consistent action sends a message inward. I am paying attention. I am dependable. I don't disappear when things get hard. Over time, this message becomes a belief. Self-trust also changes how you handle failure. When you are consistent, a setback doesn't feel like proof that you are incapable. It feels like an interruption, not an identity. You recover faster because you trust your ability to return. Consistency teaches you that progress is not fragile. It can withstand bad days, missed moments, and imperfect effort. This kind of trust is deeply regulating. It reduces anxiety because you no longer rely on emotional surges to move forward. You don't need to feel confident to act because action is already part of who you are. You stop waiting for the right mood and start relying on the systems you've built. That reliability creates calm. Consistency also reshapes your self-respect. When your actions match your intentions, there is less inner conflict. You stop fighting yourself and start cooperating with yourself. That cooperation is powerful. It frees energy that was once spent on guilt, shame, and self-criticism. In the end, consistency is not about discipline for its own sake. It is about becoming someone you can count on. And when you trust yourself, you move through life with greater steadiness, courage, and quiet confidence. When people think about courage, they often imagine bold moments, standing ovations, dramatic risks, visible victories. But most courage doesn't look like that at all. Most courage is quiet, repetitive, and almost invisible. It shows up in routines. It lives in the unremarkable decisions to keep going, to return, to try again without applause or certainty. Routine has an unfair reputation for being dull or uninspired. We associate it with boredom, not bravery. But routine is often where fear is faced most honestly. It takes courage to show up on ordinary days when nothing feels exciting and no one is watching. It takes courage to keep your commitments when enthusiasm has faded and progress feels slow. Choosing consistency over comfort again and again is not passive, it is deeply intentional. Routine is where resistance lives. It's where doubt speaks the loudest. Every routine asks the same quiet question: will you keep your word today, even though it would be easier not to? Answering yes requires courage, not because the task is dramatic, but because it requires humility. It requires accepting that growth is gradual and that meaning is built through repetition, not bursts of inspiration. There's also courage in trusting the process when outcomes are unclear. Routine asks you to invest effort without immediate reward. It asks you to believe that small actions matter, even when they don't feel significant in the moment. That belief goes against a culture that celebrates instant results and visible success. Choosing routine is choosing patience in a world that rushes. Routine also creates emotional safety. When life feels uncertain, routine becomes an anchor. Returning to familiar actions can ground you when anxiety tries to scatter your focus. There is courage in creating that stability for yourself, in becoming someone who doesn't disappear when things feel shaky. Routine says, I am still here, even when confidence is low. Over time, routine reshapes identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who relies on motivation and start seeing yourself as someone who shows up. That shift is powerful. It turns fear into something manageable, something that can coexist with action. You learn that courage doesn't require the absence of fear, it requires the willingness to move forward alongside it. In the end, courage is not always loud or visible. Often, it looks like doing the same small, honest thing again today, and then doing it again tomorrow. Discomfort has a way of convincing us that something is wrong. When things feel heavy, awkward, or emotionally strained, we often interpret that sensation as a warning to stop. We assume discomfort means we are failing, choosing incorrectly, or pushing beyond what we can handle. But discomfort is not a stop sign. More often, it is a signal that we are stretching beyond what is familiar, and growth almost always lives there. Much of discomfort comes from uncertainty. When outcomes aren't guaranteed, the nervous system looks for safety by pulling us back toward what's known. This response is natural, but it's not a reliable guide for meaningful change. If we only move when things feel comfortable, we remain confined to the edges of who we already are. Discomfort doesn't mean danger. It often means learning. There is also emotional discomfort, the kind that shows up as self-doubt, frustration, or vulnerability. This type of discomfort can feel especially convincing because it speaks in personal language. It tells us we're not good enough, that we're behind, or that others are doing better. But emotional discomfort is not evidence of inadequacy. It is often evidence of engagement. You don't feel this way when you're avoiding growth. You feel this way when you're participating in it. Stopping at the first sign of discomfort teaches the brain that avoidance equals relief. Over time, this creates a pattern where any challenge feels overwhelming. But staying present through discomfort builds tolerance. You learn that uncomfortable feelings rise and fall. You learn that you can survive them without abandoning yourself or your goals. That realization is empowering. Discomfort also refines clarity. It forces you to ask better questions. Is this hard because it's wrong or because it's new? Is this pain harmful, or is it the soreness of developing strength? When you pause to ask instead of quitting automatically, you reclaim agency over your choices. Progress rarely feels smooth. Most meaningful change feels clumsy before it feels natural. Discomfort is often the doorway, not the barrier. Walking through it requires patience and self-compassion, not harshness or pressure. When you stop treating discomfort as an emergency, you gain resilience. You become less reactive and more intentional. You learn that you don't need constant reassurance to move forward. And in that steadiness, discomfort loses its power to stop you. It becomes simply part of the path. Transformation is often imagined as a single defining moment, a breakthrough, a decision, a turning point where everything suddenly changes. But real transformation rarely happens that way. It unfolds through repeated choice. It is shaped by the small decisions you make when no one is watching, decisions that feel insignificant on their own but powerful over time. Every day presents choices that seem ordinary, whether to follow your plan or your mood, whether to show up or postpone, whether to speak to yourself with respect or criticism. These choices don't announce themselves as life-changing. They don't come with certainty or excitement, yet they are the building blocks of identity. Who you become is not determined by what you intend, but by what you repeatedly choose. Repeated choice requires patience. Results lag behind effort, and that delay can be discouraging. It's easy to believe that nothing is happening and that your consistency doesn't matter. But change is often happening beneath the surface, long before it becomes visible. Habits are forming. Neural pathways are strengthening. Self-trust is quietly being rebuilt. The absence of immediate feedback does not mean the absence of progress. There is also humility in repeated choice. You have to accept that you will need to choose again tomorrow, and the day after that. There is no finish line where discipline becomes automatic and effort disappears. Transformation asks for ongoing participation. Not perfection, participation. Missed days don't cancel the process. They simply require you to return. Repeated choice also frees you from relying on motivation. Motivation fluctuates, but choice remains available. Even on difficult days, you can still choose the next right action. That ability is empowering. It shifts control from emotion to intention. You stop waiting for the perfect mood and start trusting your capacity to act anyway. Over time, repeated choice reshapes self-perception. You stop identifying as someone who tries and start identifying as someone who does. That shift changes how you handle setbacks, how you respond to fear, and how much belief you place in yourself. Confidence becomes the byproduct of action, not the prerequisite. Transformation is not loud or dramatic. It is steady. It is cumulative. It is built in moments that feel small but are deeply consequential. And when you look back, you don't see one moment that changed everything. You see a pattern of choices that quietly did.